Mayor, we're ready when you are.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the Board of Trustees meeting for the town of Fraser, Wednesday, July 2nd at 6:01 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Adam Quicklin,
Peggy Smith.
Julie White.
Louis Gregory,
Katie Souls.
And Brian Cirkvenick. Could I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes for June 4th, 2025, Resolution 2025-0701, contract with HPM Inc. for Elk Ranch Road PRV installation. Also, Resolution 2025-0702, contract with Edge Contracting Incorporated for the South Wapiti Bridge repair. And Resolution 2025-0703, Change Order 1, Triple M Construction.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
a second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Takes us to open forum. This is for business not on the agenda. Do we have anyone online? Okay. All right, we'll close open forum. Moving on to discussion and possible action regarding Grand County Historical Preservation Registry. Shanna. Hi.
How are y'all doing? Good.
How are you?
Nice to see you.
Long
since I've
time.
seen you, right? So what I'm going to talk about is the Grand County Historical Preservation Board and what it is and what it does and what it can do. And then we can talk about it and relevant to the benefits for the town of Fraser and also businesses in the town of Fraser. Oh, thank you. So historical preservation of Grand County. That was Grampy, what it looked like at one time. So in 1996, the Grand County Historic Preservation Board was established by resolution by the
Excuse
county.
me, can you, are you gonna project this on the Zoom call or can you do that? Because it's not showing up. Shannon, we like seeing you, but
That's okay. I'd rather
people that are,
I can
if-
avoid
if
being.
anyone's dialed in, they won't be able to follow you.
No worries.
Very good, there it is.
Interesting, but now we can't. But now we can.
Ha, good job. Thank you.
Bravo.
So in giving a history of this board, and y'all can read along, I won't go into detail. But so it was established in 1996, and the purpose of the resolution was to promote public health, safety, and welfare through the protection and preservation of the historic and cultural heritage of Grand County, the enhancement of property values and stabilization of historic neighborhoods, farms, and ranches, increase of economic and financial benefits as a result of the attraction of tourists and visitors, and the provision of educational opportunities to increase the public appreciation of Grand County's unique heritage. So preservation boards have to be boards of local government. There is one other that does it countywide. The town of Steamboat, Breckenridge, Crested Butte all have it locally. Just to give you a history of what historic preservation boards look like. I'm not making move. What do I need? I'm putting the big button, right?
I have to click on the screen again because you have to share it.
So Shanna,
There we go.
on these boards, in this case, would it just be us? Would we?
No, I'll explain more.
Okay.
So this was what was originally established, and the resolution has never been rescinded. So the resolution is still in place. So in 1996, the original board was 5 members and they would review applications. So if a person had a historic property and wanted designation, they would submit application, make recommendations and advise the Grand County Board of County Commissioners. They advised and assisted owners of historic properties on physical and financial aspects of preservations. They developed and assisted a public education program. They conducted surveys. They advised the BOCC on matters related to preserving the historic character of Grand County, and they pursued financial assistance for preservation. Do I need to talk in the microphone more?
Here you go. So-
Okay. Oh, I keep going. Okay, I'm working now. So in 2008, they made some changes. In 2010, they made some updates again. So it was kind of a working board. Our attention was being paid to it. And this is what I get from my records. So in 2014, a letter was submitted. So when you have a historic preservation board, it gives your government a certified local government designation. And a certified local government makes you applicable to receive support from the state to support your preservation efforts. There's a little bit of money. They meet, they talk, they bring people together. They provide support if you have questions. So that is what the certified local government designation. The teeth with it is if you do not do the preservation work, if a board does not do the preservation work, they can take your certified local government away and never give it back. So in 2014, because the Grand County Historic Preservation Board was not doing work, they submitted a letter to the Office of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, which is now called SHPO, to rescind the Grand County Certified Local Government status. And because they asked that it be rescinded, we can still get it back. So that's one of the things. But being a certified local government comes with advantages. And they did. They invited us to reapply. The community was willing to recommit to historic preservation. So that's kind of the history. The resolution is still in place. The language needs to be updated. It has never been rescinded. So that's important. So that is why pursuing this avenue with the Grand County Board of County Commissioners is fruitful. Why I think that this in 2014 the board was not successful is because it was just Grand County. It did not include. It only included unincorporated Grand County. And where are most of our historical structures? They're in the towns. And so they were having a hard time to do the work. This talks a little bit more about a certified local government. You can read through it really quick. It is through the State Historic Preservation Office, and they provide financial and technical assistance to preserve the historic properties and other places of importance. So it's just a support organization, arm of the government that you can participate with. And the benefits, properties with historic designation are eligible for state historical fund. We talk about that. Certified local government grants help you operate as a board. Tax incentives, investment tax credits, tax deductions for property owners, and participation in statewide preservation programs and planning. And so if you want to learn more, there's a link. So when you are a certified local government, you do have the responsibilities, right? They do ask you to do things. You maintain your historic preservation commission. You survey local historic properties. You enforce state or local preservation laws. You provide for public participation and other functions delegated by the state. So to reinstate the CLG status and allow for local historic designation through Grand County Historic Preservation Board, the Grand County Board of County Commissioners, because it has to be a county board, similar to OLRT is how they're looking at setting it up. They work with Champions and DOLA to update the language in the resolution. I've done that, right? I have it. I have submitted it to them. And the next step and why I'm presenting to you is in order for it to be most efficient, I believe that a historic preservation board needs to cover the entire county, including the towns. And so it's requesting an intergovernmental agreement with the towns of Grand County to work most effectively. So what that looks like is that you allow the board to do the preservation work and accept the application. So for instance, we'll just use this building because it qualifies. If you at the town wanted a historic designation for this building, you would submit an application to the Historic Preservation Board and you're saying, yes, even though it's a town property and then within town limits, we are going to apply to the board. And we've had this intergovernmental agreement that allows this board to make the decision on whether or not it's historic. And then they would present it to the Board of County Commissioners. It's their board and make their recommendations and the board would go from there. And that's how it would work. Also appointing board members. It is my goal to, I think what I have now an updated language is 7, and hoping to gather people from across the county to have equal representation of who Grand County is, to make these decisions. Oh, shoot. I think it was not doing it. Okay, thanks. I'm almost done. Oops, that's the wrong way. Oh, it is the last one. Awesome. I've only done this presentation. How many towns are there? I didn't have to do Granby. 5. So where I am now is you are the last town I presented to ask if you would be interested in looking at and considering an intergovernmental agreement. To reinstate this board, I do not have to have IGAs with the towns. The towns do not have to participate. I do feel that it is most efficient if they do, and we have one board that does all of this work instead of having multiple boards across the towns. Because as we all know, doing volunteer work, it's often hard to find people to volunteer for things and be parts of boards. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
the designation, is that ever initiated by the board?
Oh, hell no.
Rather than,
No,
okay. No,
I
that's-
know.
Okay,
A property owner has to apply.
okay.
It is the same with the state, and the state process is pretty in-depth. I've gone through it. We had obtained designation for the Kremlin
And I
Depot.
didn't mean to offend you.
Oh, no. Well, but that's the question, because people are so concerned that I'm going to come in and tell them what to do with their property. It is only if you accept dollars through the state that anybody can tell you through what to do with your property. Because if you accept dollars from the state, those dollars are tax dollars that come from the people, and they have to be accountable for where those dollars are going and what those dollars are doing. And that is the only time. I am not sure about the tax incentive program. I know I recall doing my taxes one year, and one of the questions was, do you have a historically designated property? And if you have gone through this process, you could just check that box and receive some tax benefits from that. So my question to you, no decisions on the board, but would you be consider looking at an IGA? I do have a sample. I'm sorry I didn't bring it. But it's very simple, saying that we get this preservation board jurisdiction to designate properties within our town limits is really all it says.
So
for the
it's a
IGA.
governmental board. It's not like a separate
No, it cannot.
501(c)(3) or anything like that.
No.
It could get its own funding.
It
So if it's
has
coming
to
through
be
the
a county board.
Okay.
It has to be through the county. They have to operate it. It cannot be a historical association board. Although, like Travis, that you met earlier, is interested in being on that board. He's done some of that work. I have a gentleman who's the grandson of Robert Black, who founded my organization. They still have the ranch in the area, who is an architect and is interested in participating on this board to help carry on their family's legacy. And this board will meet once a quarter. I do have properties that are interested. We talked about the property. I'm going to say it's the Rowley Homestead that is seeking historical designation through the state. An example of the difference of difficulty is the state wanted to tell them how many homesteads were in the county. And she was like, do you know this? And I'm like, no, I have no idea, because so many people came and failed and left, right? So this process will be more accommodating to the people that live here. And it's also the ability to designate properties based on our community values. Whereas somebody might not find that log cabin valuable, but we as a community do. Or the state may be like, whatever, it's one of thousands of log cabins, but to us, the story's worth saving. So,
For the board, are you thinking like one person for each town and then two from the county? Is that the thought?
hopefully, I don't know, I starting out, I mean, I have to present the commissioners with a list of names of who's interested and they will choose. I don't, I can tell you none of the commissioners are supporters of my organization or members thereof. So I don't know how interested they are in preserving our history, but, they, you know, so I don't know, but it has to be county operated. So it will have county involvement. I mean, they have to set the agenda. So, or they have to hire someone as they do, or contract with someone as they do with OLRT to make the board work.
So you compared it to the Open Lands Committee. So these would be board recommendations to the county commissioners, and they can do
They can make the decision.
as they please, or they can follow recommendations as they please.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, but I mean, it's a plaque that goes on your door. I mean, you have to do all the work. It's no skin off their back. So hopefully they won't be adversarial about it. If that's what you're worried about.
No, I wasn't worried. I was just,
Never read the idea.
no, it truly is their decision in the end was my point.
Yeah, yeah. But the recommendations, the application, what it will look like, it will probably be online. It will probably be, hey, what do you want to, why do you want historic designation? Why is your property important? Ask the questions, capture that history. And that capturing the history is important as well, because history, our history is dying with community members, truly. So being able to capture that history is important to maintaining the identity of the community.
So I guess I'm a little confused. What's the purpose of signing this IGA? We can request with or without the IGA to have something designated as historic, right?
Not at the county level. You have to have the IGA in place. And it is, you have to have the IGA in place for a county board to give a designation.
So we as a municipality could do it on our.
You sure could,
Because we've got enough jurisdiction.
but
But is anyone doing it in?
you
Fraser?
wouldn't be eligible for all the programs. There is, so I bring that back. So yes, you definitely could, there is another avenue to be able to offer historic designation. And I apologize that I didn't present that. There is another avenue, but then you are not eligible for the state historic funds.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at.
You're not, so this, the certified local government route offers the most benefits, including the tax credits and access to the state historical fund.
And in the past, we've run into trouble with towns not having a historical preservation board, right?
Well, so what happened is yes, because all of the structures were, the board only covered unincorporated Garden County. I don't know if they ever even designated one building, which they were not able to do the work. For whatever reason, I have never gotten a straight answer of why that is. I don't know, but I know that my organization and with Travis would be it does meet our mission. So we are the drivers of the bus right now. We cannot operate it, although we can participate. If that makes sense.
So the Cousins Ranch Museum, said that was eligible for those state funds, or was it not?
Yeah, so the Cousins Ranch is actually on the National Register.
Okay.
So it's got the highest level of designation you can receive. And so, yes, when it was originally restored in the early 90s, it was done with state historical funds. And then when I went back to redo the roof in 2024, that was through the state historical fund as well. And I only had to, and the state historical fund for the smaller dollar grants is not as competitive as the large dollar grants. So they have two columns of eligibility, or two opportunities to apply. They also do planning grants as well. That was my journey with the Kremling Depot is probably more telling of the process. We have it's the last remaining intact train depot from the Moffett Road, which they had, the one in Fraser is now a home. So it's not original. One in Granby, they cut in half. In Hot Sulphur, they burned it down because that's what they do. And so the Kremling Depot was the last remaining one. Once again, it was in 2000s. The organization received a call. UP was going to take it apart. They put it on a truck and moved it to our museum grounds in Kremling, where it has sat on railroad ties. It just sits there, completely inaccessible. We obtained historical designation, which was notable because they usually don't give it if the structure has been moved. But I obtained historic designation for it because it's the last remaining intact one of its kind. We then did a planning grant to come up with restoration plans with funds through the State Historical Fund. And then it took me 7 tries, 7 tries. And just a couple weeks ago, I was awarded the $250,000 to begin the first phase of restoration, which is lifting it up and installing a foundation.
Good job.
Yeah, it was a big one.
Wow.
But it is a process. And so through my work with the Cousins project, I learned how to apply for preservation tax credits, which was a process in itself. I now have the resources to get it done more efficiently because I have found someone to do an audit. You have to have your project audit. These projects are they're very careful about what they do, and they hold you very accountable for what you're doing. So to have it audited, and then how to apply to receive those preservation tax credits. And 30% of a restoration project is, I mean, that's notable because it's not cheap to restore and maintain these properties, as you probably know from this building and the Green Church, which would be eligible as well.
So how do tax credits benefit a municipality?
I'm not sure. I know because I was a nonprofit, I turned around and sold them for 85 cents on the dollar, which I wish I could have gotten more, but that's not bad.
Okay.
I will be doing it again with the Kremling Depot. So I don't know if y'all can sell them or if you can utilize them. That would be an accountant question. Tax credits are definitely something that are utilized by people or way beyond my tax bracket.
Okay.
But there are those benefits that you can utilize. Yes.
We were discussing tax credits a while back when we met with someone from Owetta and
Oh, yeah.
somebody else, and if memory serves me correct, we were talking about it in regards to the historic church.
Yeah, so that would have been the same folks.
And
So I
we
did.
as the municipality would not be able to get those tax credits, but we could potentially work with the rec district or for some other nonprofit to utilize them and sell them, but we need to get a little creative,
Okay.
was my understanding.
Which we would be willing to partner with you on that. So that would be a co-grant through, like if we did the historic church, that would be just as an example. I don't know what your plans are for it. Both of our names would be on the application. And then we'd go through tax credits.
So my understanding is we're in process of doing some renovation work on the interior of the church, and we're doing some exterior renovation work and some interior. If you've done modifications to the structure, are you eligible?
So probably not at the state level because they're stricter. But as I said, we will define as a group what the qualifications are for a county level. So for instance, we can say they wanted to add on to Doc Susie's house. We're not going to keep you from adding onto your house because you probably need it, but we would ask that you would do it in a way that would maintain the historical integrity of the original structure.
Shanna, can I ask, so like the church, for instance, I believe the sanctuary is the original building.
Right, so
but
it's
it-
already been added on.
So it's already been added on. Can part of a building be designated or does it have to be the whole building?
Um,
Just curious.
that's a good question. That you got me. I don't
Okay.
know.
Okay.
But it only has to be for the,
Double wides to be historic.
what?
We don't want the double wides off the back to be historic.
Right? But if they're 30
Last
to
week.
50 years old, I mean, for the tax credits, it's 30, you can get tax credits on a 30-year-old building. For, I think the State Historical Fund, it's 50 years. So 50 years, like how many buildings around here are 50 years old? And I believe they have started, and I asked the other day, you can even get preservation tax credits for your home. Originally, it was just for the operating business. That's when they said when the edit came, they have expanded it 3 times. So my only question to you today is when I replied to the county commissioners tomorrow, I was saying that these are the towns that are interested in pursuing and participating. Can I include you on that list?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
I think it's a great lesson
Yeah, that sounds
opportunity
good
that
to
opens
them.
up I remember when we were trying to replace these windows and it was such a debate if we go historic, which they were single pane and I mean, we had to upgrade. And
Right,
so
right.
State funds and all that kind of stuff on a bit.
Right, and the state funds would have made you do historic.
Yeah, right, right.
Whereas our local designation would be like, dude, we totally understand that you want to be warm. Like,
But
we get that.
we tried to mimic everything we could.
Right,
Yeah, so-
and that is how I envision this board being. I have one other pitch.
Do we need a resolution or anything, or just?
Nope.
Not at this
Nope.
time.
Our fundraiser is August 22nd. So as you know, we operated on a $300,000 budget. We got $7,000 from the Grand Foundation this year, which is a decrease from years past. We get $10,000 maybe from the BOCC. We have to apply for a grant. So we this rates 30% of our operating income. So it's a hoedown for history. It's at the Rendezvous Center. It's a barbecue dinner. We'll have a live band and line dance instructors because we expect you to dance. And tickets are just $75 for members and $85 for non-members. So we're trying to keep it affordable and hope to have a lot of people. We do have a live auctioneer that is, if you've ever, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he tricked my friend, or he got my friend last year to bid against herself. So he's hilarious. And so it's a good time and hopefully you can come.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Shanna.
All right, good work, Shanna.
Thank
Yeah.
you, y'all, and please reach out to me if you have any further questions.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
An easy way.
take care.
Thank you, and thanks for the
Yeah.
tour today.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Michael's mother just passed away. So he
Oh.
is not gonna come back to the meeting. So but we will push on. Okay. Next up, recommending approval of final plat and major site plan for Centrum condominiums. Motion for continuance. Alan.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. I'm Alan Seeliff, Assistant Town Planner. Yeah, tonight is a request to continue this item to satisfy a code requirement in Chapter 19 that requires the board to meet or hold a hearing within 45 days of Planning Commission action. So this application was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission on May 28th, and it included a condition of approval that any potential adjustments to the building footprint or building elevations be made to accommodate a yet unresolved utility and easement constraints on the site. There's still some ongoing locates and work to propose a solution to either relocate or to adjust the building footprint to accommodate these on the site. So while we were optimistic a resubmittal would be ready in June, it hasn't yet been provided. We're anticipating a resubmittal next week, hopefully. And since it's not yet ready, we'll have to request this continuance. The code allows the board to continue an item for up to 30 days unless additional time is granted or is requested by the applicant. At this point, the applicant hasn't indicated support of a further continuation. I believe they may want to provide an update at the next meeting unless they're online here, but I didn't see them online. prior to the start of this. So at this point, the request would be to continue this 30 days, which would just bring us back to the board meeting in 2 weeks on July 16th, because the next meeting on August 6th is slightly beyond that 30-day threshold, unfortunately. So at this point, there's two motions within the staff memo. I believe it's the first one would have been if the applicant granted or requested additional time. The second one is if they don't, would be to just request that motion for 30 days and then anticipate this coming back up in 2 weeks to request another continuance. Hopefully at that point, we'll be able to confirm that we've got a resubmittal and it'll be on track for that August 6th meeting, but we'll provide an update at that point.
So if we go with that first one no later than August 6th, it can still come back to us sooner,
Well,
right?
yeah, the first one we would only be able to request that if the applicant jumps on here and says, yes, we're good with it.
Okay,
then
but they're not
to
here.
request it. Yeah, and I don't
Okay.
believe they're online here unless you guys have seen anyone join.
Okay.
So at this point, and they may have attended in person, but obviously haven't tonight. So at this point, it'll just be that second resolution or that second motion
So
that
we
we're
have
requesting tonight.
ongoing surveying and other
Exactly.
exercises happening. Are there any possibilities that we are further delay to this process, or is this 100%?
There potentially could be, yeah, it's
there
kind
at
of a
this
wait
point.
and see at this point. I think at a certain point, if we're not anticipating a resubmittal within, even next week, we'll have to get that update and decide how to bring this forward regardless, but or it could just be some additional 30-day continuances. Ultimately, what we don't want to do is bring forward a building footprint with specific units, height, design, have it get potentially approved by the board, and then have there be a major revision and just have to bring it back through the process again. So we're just trying to avoid unnecessarily going through that, but.
They're waiting on information that we're providing.
Oh, I believe they're locating some private sewer lines also. We had provided them
Okay,
information on
it's all on the
town
private side
sewer
at this
line.
point in time.
It's been a bit of a
You got it.
collaborative
Okay.
process, though. Some of it was town infrastructure, a water line to the water well, and then a sewer line that has been provided. And then it was kind of discovered late in the game in June that there were private sewer lines on adjoining properties also going through the site.
So I'll just add that there was some difficulty in locating the raw water line. But if the building had stayed out of existing town easements for the water line and the sewer pump back line, there would not have been any issues. So the delay has been in locating the lines to see if there's any wiggle room with our easements to move them. And in the subsequent, totally different matter came up. I was made aware of two private utility easements that were granted by the Claytons for the service lines of the two houses along 40. And one of those service lines would pass directly through the foundation of the Centrum building. So they have to work with that. I believe they did locate the raw water line, and it is, I think things will work, but ultimately if they had stayed out of the easements, there would have been no issues. But the easements are kind of restrictive on that lot with the pump back line and the well and the pump house. So we're working with them to be flexible on some of the easements, to cross over property lines if there's patios and things, working with them to see what we can do to make the project successful, but still be able to maintain utilities that are 9 feet deep. So the biggest holdup that caused this delay was the private utility easements that were found that did not show up on their title work, but we found them recorded at the town. So, or we found them recorded with the county, but they didn't show up on title. So, and I don't know if it was because it was a private easement. I'm not sure what happened there, but as soon as we found it, we provided it to them that afternoon. So they're working through that.
So the ball's in their court and it's their
Also in their court
timeline.
currently, yeah, we're not,
Okay.
there's nothing on our end.
And we talked to them, it was yesterday, and it sounded like a resubmittal should be ready by next week. That's why hopefully we'll be able to at least provide that update.
Cool.
We don't want to bring it forward in 2 weeks, though. We want it to have a full review cycle with referral agencies and time to prepare the full presentation and staff report. So the early August meeting seems to be on track as far as our plan.
Can I make a motion to approve a continuance for 30 days?
I'll second it.
So that's referencing resolution 2025-0202, correct?
There's no resolution, it's
no
just a motion.
Oh, it's just a
Yeah,
motion.
that's from the planning commission.
The attached resolutions were from planning commission, and prior to that, there was a
Got it.
variance board of adjustment.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, resolution 2025-0704, contract with HRS Water Consultants Incorporated, water rights north of County Road 8.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees, Paul Johnson, Public Works Director. I do want to apologize. In the staff briefing, my recommendation has Edge Contracting, so it's the wrong vendor. It's HRS. But this is to have the water rights on the property that's for sale north of town. The large parcel that we've had several inquiries as far as annexation goes, and they want to know what density can they build? How many units can they do? What can they do commercially? And we can't have the answer because we don't know what the water rights are. The family doesn't have the full amount. They don't know what their agricultural use will transfer to as far as a municipal right goes. So the proposal here is from HRS, who is our current hydrologist that does all of our anything that has to do with the wells or any of that. So for example, when we were talking about diversions at dinner, they're the ones who tell us when we have to, how much water we release from Mary's Pond, how much releases out of Grand Parks ponds when those are needed. So they're the company that does that. And there was the Jones Family Trust, I believe, is who owns that land. They provided some information, but that information is just sort of when they flooded the fields, it doesn't have consumptive use over the history of that right. I know we had talked about the Shoshone right over dinner. One of these water rights is actually senior to that. So there would be almost no way a call would happen on this water right if we were to get it. It'd be very rare. So this would set us up for when we do look at annexation, the town would have their own report, and we're not relying on a developer to tell us how much water they have or how much water they're going to give us, so that we don't agree to some sort of annexation that says you can have a density of 2,700 units, but they can't provide the water. So this report would give us what the cost of those water rights estimated would be. Obviously, that would be subject to negotiation depending on how long all of this takes. But then it would allow us to have better conversations once the comp plan is done of how we can annex and what development can look like north of County Road 8. So they've been provided all the information we were given from the realtor on that property. They've evaluated it, then they would do some more work. So that's what this proposal is for. We have budgeted for water rights diversion and development in the budget for this year. So the funds would come out of there, out of the water fund, but it would set the town up and the board up to know what that right's going to look like. Generally, if it's, I think it's somewhere around 13.1 CFS. And generally, when you convert it to municipal, you lose about half. So that would give us somewhere around 6, which would still double the town's water rights that we currently have with what we have for the north system and the south system combined. So there's the potential for a good water right there if it's been used historically, and it's a very senior right that would be more senior than our current downtown old north system right, which is also very senior. So it's something that nobody who's been trying to sell it over the last 3 years has done the process. So the developers we've talked to who have been interested, they don't know what they can do either. And so I don't think the family doesn't want to spend any more money than they've already spent on the report they generated. But this would allow us to make a wise decision if we were to look at annexation to the north. So that's what, so the recommendation is to approve this through HRS, but wanted to bring it to the board first, just in case that was something that the board didn't want to see us do. But I think it sets us up for any conversations going forward to have a good conversation with any developer or any property owner who wants to annex into the town on what that would look like as far as dedicating water rights to the town.
And this is east of 40.
So it's east of 40, yes. So the pole yard lot has no water rights. And then the 128 acres that is owned by the same family has no water rights. They've kept all the water rights east of 40 and north of County Road 8. But if it were to be given to the town as a part of an annexation, I would suggest we annex it in a way that it is for the use of the entire town.
I thoroughly agree. I think this is an imperative first step when you're looking at this. I think the town probably even needs it for full build out of Byers Peak Ranch and redevelopment of downtown. I don't know that our current wells and rights actually fulfill all of that. It takes us a ways, but And I think the PRV helps readjust some of those numbers as well.
There-
But this is an essential step that we need to do to acquire these.
So you don't have a price, do you have is there a dollar amount in
17,
here?
yeah.
I have a not to exceed of 17,500.
Oh,
I think
for
it's
this guy.
16,900,
Okay.
but
And the seniority of these rights is
well, it's
incredible.
number 4 in the state.
Yeah, it's,
So
The Hammond
these
did?
have been on the
Hammond
town's
did, yeah.
radar for a long time, out of the Hammond ditch, yes.
So,
Okay,
so Paul, does this report, so we approve this, so they do this evaluation. Does this hold up with the state water board? I mean, if they say we get, I don't know, I mean, 6 or 7,
this is just gonna be an estimate. You go to the state and water court could do whatever they want, but we have no way to, you're not in a position to really negotiate with water court or even have a conversation with water court if you don't have a hydrologist or somebody who said, this is what it looks like. Here's the consumptive use over the last 120 years, where they've shown they've used it every single year, so you haven't lost it. Is what we're looking for, to make sure that you can actually use that water right.
And hopefully it's a part of the horse trading.
no guarantee
You're not being heard on Zoom.
Hopefully, it's part of the horse trading of the annexation rather than a direct purchase. So,
right.
that's, and hopefully there's excess water so that
So we
The
would
rest
not
of the
get
town
the
can
full
benefit.
13.1. There's always going to be a reduction of at least 40% because you're going from agricultural to municipal. So it's not returning back into the ground generally in the same manner. So you will lose some. I would also, if we were to acquire this right, would look to have a point of diversion change to a well field, similar to what we have in the Maryville water right, so that we're doing wells instead of surface treatment. We're actually the only municipality here that does wells, and we don't have to worry about turbidity. We don't get the cloudy water when we have runoff. So there's some advantages to the wells. A little bit more maintenance on the wells, but we don't have a surface water treatment plant and all of those filters and things. For example, hot sulfur is suffering with their filters. They're replacing them one every 3 or 4 years, and I think we have 8 of them that need to be replaced. So
so it's really purposes of negotiating annexation,
Annexations.
not guaranteed water rights.
no. Well, as part of
Well, we don't
annexation, we
annex
would
if they
get
don't
it.
take us water.
It
Well,
allows,
understood,
it
but
would allow the board to negotiate, have a position to negotiate, knowing that there's the potential to have this many water rights coming in.
okay.
Otherwise, we're left in the dark or we're left to something supplied by the developer, and you're taking the developer at their word.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2025-0704 contract HRS Water Consultant.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The well system.
Okay.
And that ditch to get.
So at this time, we are going to suspend we'll need a motion to suspend the town board meeting and open up a public hearing.
No, you don't need, sorry, Mayor, you don't need to suspend the town board meeting. It's just a part of, but we'll do need a motion to open the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Board. Garrett Scott, Town Planner. The item on the agenda before you in this public hearing is a proposed code amendment ordinance to Chapter 19, which would implement various zoning incentives related to affordable housing. So if you all recall from February of this year, our Assistant Town Manager, Sarah Catanzarite, led a workshop with the board that talked about various affordable housing incentive strategies at a pretty high level. That was followed up by a workshop with the Planning Commission in March, where the Planning Commission, in conjunction with town staff, identified and ranked these 7 priorities to implement to incentivize affordable housing development in the town of Fraser. This ordinance covers both priorities 1 and 2, expanding and modifying our existing density bonus provision, as well as introducing a height bonus provision to certain zone districts in the town. So what the bulk of this ordinance 254 contains is a new section to our zoning code, proposed to be numbered section 19-2-275, entitled Affordable Housing Zoning Incentives. So kind of the thinking behind this is that this section of the code would be a one-stop shop for understanding the various zoning incentives that are available for developments that provide deed-restricted affordable housing. This section of the code has summary tables in addition to text, sentences, so that the criteria and incentives can be more easily understood just by glancing at those tables. By organizing these incentives in this way in a singular section, it's also easier to modify them in the future, to better tweak changing market conditions or to better suit development proposals. And also keeping them in one place in this one section ensures consistency and consistent application of these criteria across our various zone districts. Right now in our code, the density bonus incentive is in two separate locations. It's in our Riverwalk Zone District Code and it's in the Victoria Village Overlay Zone District Code. So this serves to just kind of consolidate and help make sure that our code is consistent. So one of the first kind of things that this amendment achieves is providing these incentives in more zoning districts than they are currently available. So this is a map of our zoning map here in the town, kind of centered on areas that are not zoned planned development, kind of our straight zone districts, if you will. And the areas highlighted or outlined in blue are the Riverwalk and Victoria Village overlay zones. These are the only zone districts where a density bonus provision is currently available. What this ordinance would do is extend these incentives to the zone districts outlined in green, which are maybe a little hard to see on the screen here, but it's the business and high density multifamily residential zones. So it does cover quite a bit greater area within the town, as well as it covers some parcels that are still vacant and have yet to be developed. And certainly it's the town's desire to see parcels within these zone districts as they submit land use applications for approval, seek some of these zoning incentives. This table that's up on the screen summarizes the criteria that need to be met in order for a developer or a development to achieve these incentives. So again, looking at the very top, this is available in those 4 zone districts that I mentioned, the Riverwalk and Victoria Village currently, as well as high density multifamily and business. So the incentives would be achieved when the development provides at least 20% of all the residential units as deed restricted affordable housing units. So that 20% ratio matches our existing density bonus provision that's currently in our code for the Riverwalk and Victoria Village zones. Going down to the next row with the average annual median income. Sorry, I almost forgot the acronym for AMI. The AMI percentages for the various deed restricted units. What this ordinance would do is separate rental residential units from for sale units, as well as identify a average AMI and a maximum AMI that any single unit could be placed at. So for example, in a development with rental units, those deed restricted rental units should have an average AMI of 100%, with no individual unit having a AMI greater than 140%. In for sale units, it's an average of 140 and a maximum of 160. So those maximum figures come from DOLA's definitions of affordable housing in a rural resort community. So certainly we don't want to see any deed restricted units higher than that number, but we want to also see units that are at a lower AMI and see a more affordable average AMI across those deed restricted units. The other thing that I'll note is that the column on the far right for Victoria Village / St. Louis Landing has different requirements for rental AMIs that are consistent with what is currently in the code for the Victoria Village overlay zones density bonus. That density bonus has a 80% AMI requirement, so functionally we are just carrying that forward here in the code. Does that make sense? Are there any questions on those AMI levels?
What is B and RW?
B is the business zone and RW is Riverwalk.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then the average for sale AMI, I've seen the table for rental AMI, but is there a table also for average for sale AMI?
There's not, as far as I'm aware. I believe the way that the sale price at a specific AMI would be calculated is based on, you know, prevailing mortgage rates on a loan for a certain purchase price and whatever those monthly mortgage payments being, you would equate that to the monthly rental rates from the Chaffa tables. Does that make sense?
So like a 30%.
Yeah. I'm just sort of, so a market rate for a unit, what would that equate to it as an AMI? Does that make, I'm just kind of wondering, because I've never seen a table for sale.
Yeah.
AMI.
Yeah, I think I know Winter Park with Hideaway Village, those are for sale deed restricted units. I don't know off the top of my head what those sell for or have sold for. I guess, you know, a for sale price of at a 140 or 160 AMI is simply just what's recommended at this time to be in alignment with DOLA's definitions and recommendations. I think one data point that I can clearly point to is the Noosh Village project in Granby and the for sale units that they're looking to build with phase one. I believe those are all targeted at 140, 150, or 160 AMI.
Okay.
And again, what that sales price actually is, I think varies based on interest rate and
Mortgage.
what the mortgage payment actually is, if that makes
I don't
sense.
want to put you on the spot here. Go
No, it's
ahead.
okay.
So now DOLA came up with these numbers, but it seems like Aspen and Vale's numbers were much higher at some of the conference things that we went to. We're not in that bucket with them, are we? Or is this?
I don't think so. So if you recall from the board retreat, the kind of rural resort exemption that DOLA has allowed essentially allows some communities to say that in our community, affordable housing is actually even higher than this AMI number. For example, prevailing market rents are so high that we need to say, you know, 160 or 180% AMI is an affordable rental rate. I believe that's what the DOLA, that rural resort exemption is. And I don't believe we have that situation here in Fraser.
So, this is, no, unfortunately for Adam, you don't need to go get married, but if you had a wife, then you might qualify. So it's business, it almost takes two incomes to be at that 160% level.
Sure.
So that makes it challenging.
But that's a maximum,
Mhm.
right? So you can make less.
Yeah, but
Yes.
it's expensive.
Yeah.
So the last thing I wanted to note on this table is that with this amendment, we are also adding some regulations around the size of the deed restricted units. So right now, with our density bonus provision, there's no language around this. What this amendment would implement is a requirement that any deed restricted units in the development be no more than 15% smaller in gross floor area to a corresponding market rate unit, such that you can't say build, you know, units that are much smaller than market rate units, as well as the bedroom to unit ratio between the market rate and deed restricted units should be similar. And the language is flexible enough to have some flexibility. But something that would be prohibited, for example, is a development that where all the market rate units say are 3 bedroom, but the deed restricted units are studios, for example. So this table summarizes what the zoning incentives actually are, what would be available to that property developer as they're developing and seeking land use approvals for their site. So if they achieve the requirements that we just went over with regards to deed restricted units, they receive these incentives. So right now in these zone districts, there's a baseline density, maximum density of 20 units per acre. If they achieve that incentive, that 20 unit per acre cap simply goes away. And they can provide as many residential units on the site as would also conform with all other zoning and site design standards, such as setbacks, height, open space, and parking. However, to help achieve that additional density above 20 units per acre, these incentives also allow some flexibility in those zoning standards. So for example, a reduction of no greater than 10% to site setbacks, an increase of no greater than 10% to building height, parking reduction no greater than 10%, and open space can be as low as 15% as opposed to 35%, which is the current requirement in the high density multifamily and business zones. So staff believes that these incentives will help, a developer achieve that additional density by allowing flexibility to these standards.
So the maximum height, no greater than 10%. I mean, most of the area is 45 feet. So does that mean they can only get 9 more feet? They
It would
can't get 10
be,
feet?
yeah, it would be
4.5 feet.
4.5.
49.5.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm even doing 20. Yeah. So that's not a big,
You can get a
That gets you
cornice or
confused.
something sticking up. too.
Just
Right.
being real.
yeah.
So I was part of the planning thing when we discussed all this and we were kind of just shooting from the hip. And, it was sort of like, well, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do 10% and maybe we'll do 20% and give them that. And I don't know if we ever really circled back around and said, what are some of these other communities that were in our cohort are doing?
Yeah.
Did you get the opportunity to do that in your spare time?
Yes. So one community that we actually looked pretty closely at was Frisco, as it turns out. A lot of the way this is structured just in the code as far as formatting was kind of use their code as a template, but I'll also speak to what their incentives and criteria actually are. Frisco, my recollection is similar on the height, that it is a fairly modest height increase. And they also have a much higher threshold of deed restricted units to achieve these incentives. I believe theirs is 50%. So it's a balance. I believe we want to make these incentives as attractive as possible. I think a couple recent examples here in Fraser that we could look to, the ski broker / Ascent condominiums that recently had its site plan and plat approved by the board earlier this year. As part of that application, the applicant had requested a administrative height variance, a 10% increase to the building height. Now, that is a modest height increase, but it did allow them to build a 4th floor in part of the building and build 2 additional units on that 4th floor that really couldn't have otherwise been built without that 10% height increase. Now, at the time, this obviously what's being proposed is not in our code right now. So the only avenue available to the applicant at that time was that administrative variance. Staff believes that by implementing this incentive into the code, even though that 10% height increase is modest, in some instances, that could be the difference between a 3rd and a 4th floor, as we have seen with a recent land use application. Does that make sense?
Why not just make it 50 feet? I mean, if it sounds like every building's gonna come in and go, I need that 10%.
And frankly, I think that would be great because what the town gets in exchange is deed restricted units in the development. I think it would be perfectly fine for developers to seek this incentive and for the town to gain deed restricted units in return.
I'm gonna change the line of questioning a little
Okay.
bit. Did we think about any sensitive spots? I was standing out here in the park earlier and I was looking towards the mountains and 55-foot buildings across the railroad, you don't see the mountains anymore. I'm thinking of even the Lions ponds. I've stood next to, this week I walked around a bit and I stood next to some of the well houses and Byers Peak gets blocked out by 50 or by certain heights and stuff.
Sure.
And I was thinking that maybe we need to have some sensitive view shed areas that, because yeah, I mean, 55 feet up against the river on that side kills out quail, sunlight and views. And these are people's investments and stuff like that as well. I think our public parks, people want to see the mountains. You don't want to come here and just see buildings. That's not what I imagine of Fraser. So has there been any thought to some sensitive view shed locations? And I'm thinking our green spaces are probably those. This is a great example. I look across, especially if you're out there in the park, I'm wondering how tall those telephone poles are. Is that 55 feet across the way? Because yeah, when you're in the park, the mountains are gone. And
It's a valid question. I think the type of height increases that we're discussing today and proposing as part of these incentives really are quite modest in compared to what the baseline zoning already allows. So again, in these zone districts, the maximum allowed height already is either 45 feet or in the case of high density multifamily, 40 feet. That's a height that allows, generally speaking, a 3-story building. And the intention behind these height increases is to allow that potential 4th floor to it. I recognize that any additional building height will block some degree of additional views, but I think the difference between 45 and say 55 feet on view impacts is somewhat negligible.
well, it depends where you're standing. It can be
Certainly.
It can be absolute, depending on where you're standing.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
One item I also wanted to touch on briefly is that within the Riverwalk zone, there is this requirement for properties that have frontage on either Highway 40 or Clayton Court to have ground floor commercial retail uses. So this is a requirement of the zoning district. This affects the properties shown here in red that have frontage on one of those streets. And also written into the code is this allowance that if the development provides a certain percentage of ground floor commercial uses, then that site is also allowed a higher residential density of up to 40 units per acre. I just want to note that with this code amendment, nothing is changing as it relates to that 40 unit per acre ground floor commercial density bonus at this time. Staff believes that the Riverwalk zone inherently has some other incentives, such as the required open space being 5% on a mixed use site that can help facilitate mixed use development already without having to go into a 10% height increase, a 10% parking reduction, etc. Are there any questions with this point?
So you have the option of putting retail in and getting more density, or you can not put retail in and do whatever you want.
So for the properties that are highlighted here, which is not every property that's zoned Riverwalk, it's just the properties with frontage on Highway 40 and Clayton Court, ground floor commercial is required. So it must be provided for these properties. However, if any of these properties or any properties outside of the ones listed here that are also zoned Riverwalk voluntarily choose to provide ground floor commercial uses at a certain ratio, it's 40% of the ground floor area, then that triggers this 40 unit per acre density bonus. So the properties shown here can provide a more modest amount of commercial uses to where this density bonus isn't triggered. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just am trying to avoid the downzoning debacle that we have with the ski broker.
What, can you speak up, please?
The down zoning debacle that we had with the ski broker where Clark decided that he could take the commercial out and put residential in because our code allowed that to happen. So I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I would just say for these properties highlighted here, there is a clear code requirement to have some degree of commercial uses on the street frontages. So next, I also want to speak to another incentive that is provided within this code amendment, which is a height bonus. So this is somewhat separate and distinct from the incentives that we just talked about, given that there's a slightly different criteria, the main difference just being that there's a higher ratio of deed restricted units necessary to achieve this height bonus. So to achieve the height bonus, you have to have 30% deed restricted units as opposed to 20%. What does the height bonus do? Instead of a 10% increase, it is an increase by 10 feet. So what this means is that in the high density multifamily zone, buildings can go as tall as 50 feet, in business and Riverwalk as tall as 55. This height bonus does not apply to the St. Louis Landing overlay zone because the baseline maximum height there is already 55 feet. Part of staff's logic in presenting this is that it allows other properties within the town to achieve the same height that is allowed for the town's St. Louis Landing development, subject to the provision of deed restricted affordable housing at this 30% ratio. And one other thing that is in the amendment as it relates to this height bonus is this fairly broad language that allows the final reviewing body, which in this case would always, almost certainly always be the Board of Trustees, allows that body to require additional architectural design features above and beyond kind of our baseline architectural design guidelines in granting this height bonus. So there is this additional layer of review of the building's design and architectural features to help ensure its compatibility with the surrounding uses and maybe take into account things like scenic views. Any questions with this?
So the height, maximum height is measured by the mean or median roof height, so it could actually be 60 feet or,
If there was a very steep pitched roof, in theory, yes. But I think that would be somewhat rare. The slopes of most pitched roofs in town are to a degree where the height of that roof above the midpoint is typically just a few feet, around 3 to 4. I would also add that something else that's in our height measurement is that height must be measured from the lowest point of existing grade. So if you're building, say, on a sloped hillside, whatever the lowest point is of that grade, even before grading the site for the building, we would measure that as the reference point for the building height. So for example, on St. Louis Landing, there's a lot of fill going into that site to raise the site up and then place the buildings on top of that. So when staff evaluated that site plan, we took into account that I believe it was on the order of 1 to 3 feet of fill where those buildings lie in accounting for the building height.
So that's the old downtown, assuming most of the lots are flat. But doesn't Rendezvous have a different? And don't you think that maybe we should be using that criteria on a townwide basis?
Methodology.
The methodology?
Sure. I think staff is certainly not opposed to looking at changing our definition of height to match what's used in Rendezvous and Grand Park. I do think that would require some evaluation of our maximum heights across our zone districts just to ensure, I guess, no surprises, for lack of a better way of saying it. Because generally that height measurement in our PDs is more lenient than the town code definition and height measurement.
Garrett, can you summarize the difference between
Mhm.
what they do?
Yes, so in Rendezvous in Grand Park, height is measured based on the average primary four corners of the building and at their finished grade. So for example, if you have a significantly sloped site and you come in and level it flat, then you don't have to measure from what the pre-existing topography was, for example. Alternatively, if you build into a sloped site to where you have one side of the building is, say, 1 story, and then the backside down the slope is 2 stories, kind of a walkout basement type situation, you would essentially take the average of those two grade points in determining the height. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you.
I think amending the code to, so we don't have a discussion in the future that
Sure.
would be good.
It can only go one way because they have standing. Is that-
Can you speak up?
I'm sorry, I was asking if it can only go one way because
think it-
it's a negotiated thing with Grand Park and Rendezvous.
Well,
So-
it's in the annexation agreement, right?
Yeah, so
It's not-
we would have to amend to that, is kind of what I'm thinking,
I don't-
rather
We
than,
can't amend that.
Yeah.
Can we?
Yeah,
it's a one-way.
Yeah.
he's just saying we can only move to the four corner
Mm.
idea.
For the town.
We can't
Move
force
them
them
along.
back
No.
to
Right.
45.
We
But for
can,
the Summerall property, that is a town, subject to the town code, not the PDD or annexation agreement, right?
Correct, yes, because it's not part of the Grand Park PD, it's zone business.
Right,
So yes.
okay.
My question on the view shed was actually meant for this clause, not the
Okay.
last one, so.
Okay, yeah. It's a valid point, this language that's italicized here, frankly, is not included in the previous 10% height increase. That's not to say that certainly any, 10% height increase couldn't be evaluated similarly, and we could even copy this language over if desired. I don't know if we can make that change to the ordinance on the fly.
Another option I was thinking is, I know in Byers Peak Ranch, we had a graduated setback or a graduated height as well to protect some of those things. So I don't know. I think there's some ideas out there where maybe we can add some nuance to this. And, I think being able to see Byers in the Front Range and some of those things from
Mhm.
important green spaces maintains our character. I would imagine a lot of people come to our picnic in the park because of the atmosphere of it. So that's important to me. I don't know.
Okay, in addition to these zoning incentives, there are a few other miscellaneous kind of more cleanup items contained in this ordinance. One of them, one of them is just simply correcting a typo where the Riverwalk zone is still referred to as the Riverwalk mixed use overlay. This should have been changed late 2023 when those other broader changes to the Riverwalk zone occurred. Another change that I've already kind of stumbled over in this presentation is renaming the Victoria Village overlay zone to the St. Louis Landing overlay zone, simply just to be consistent with the renaming of that development. And then the last thing is reducing side yard setbacks in the high density multifamily zone to 5 feet from 7 feet, which is currently in the code. In staff's review of this, we believe this could have just simply been an error. When looking at the table below that shows side yard setbacks in our various zone districts, 7 feet is the side yard setback in our lowest density zones. And then you can see with the medium density single and multifamily zones, the side yard setback is 5 feet. So it doesn't make a lot of logical sense to have a more restrictive 7-foot side yard setback for our highest density multifamily zone. As mentioned in the staff report, this ordinance went to the Planning Commission in May for their review. They ultimately recommended approval of the ordinance. I do just want to note 2 changes to the text of the ordinance that occurred after the Planning Commission meeting, after review by the town attorney. That changed added text is highlighted here. It is simply, the intention of this highlighted text is just to clarify and make perfectly clear that the 10% height increase and the 10 feet height increase are not additive. You can only achieve one or the other. I also briefly wanted to talk through maybe an example development scenario. It is difficult to talk about the impact of this, given that land use development is very site specific. But a couple of things I just wanted to summarize and highlight. On the left are a few, notes, site development scenario type notes without these incentives, and with incentives on the right. Really, one of the biggest changes, I believe, is the reduction in open space, reducing it down from 35 to 15%. Effectively results in actually, if you do the math, a roughly 31% increase to buildable site area. So those figures, those square footage figures there are just for an example, 1 acre site. But that increase in potential buildable areas with either buildings themselves or parking or access drives can go up quite a bit and therefore help facilitate that additional density. The other thing I want to emphasize is that our maximum 20 unit per acre is somewhat arbitrary. That goes away completely with the incentives. Without these incentives, all units are market rate and generally a maximum height of 3 stories. With incentives, a ratio, a percentage of them, 20 or 30% are deed restricted affordable. Buildings can generally go up to 4 stories in height, and there are some extra potential reductions in parking and setbacks. So ultimately, staff recommends that the board make a motion to approve ordinance 254. And if adopted today, then the ordinance would take effect in early August. And at that time, land use applications could take advantage of this amended section of the code. So this concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any further questions you may all have.
So if we approve this today and we wanted to make that modification to the height, is that something totally different? We come back, or is this,
Yeah.
we're just approving it?
Yeah, that's a different part of the code. It's not in
This is,
the 4 corners thing.
yeah.
Right. I would say to
Sorry about
change that height definition, we'd want to bring that to the planning commission and follow that process.
Do we have to come out of public hearing before an ordinance is passed?
I would take public comment, and then you have to come out of the public hearing before you would make a motion on the resolution or the ordinance.
All right. Are you guys ready for public comment? All right. Anybody online for public comment?
Please raise your hand online if you would like to speak during the public hearing.
Okay.
I move to close the public hearing.
There you go.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, we've closed public hearing.
Now we have a hand raised, now that you've closed it, if you'd like to take public comment or not.
Yeah, we can open it back up.
Okay, I move to reopen the public hearing.
Second.
There's a delay on the hand raise.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are back in public hearing. Mr. Lipscomb, you have.
Hey, guys, sorry about that. My button operation wasn't very fast tonight. Sorry, you guys are moving faster than I can click buttons, I guess. I think, the merits of what you're trying to achieve here are worthy of recognizing. However, I really think it lacks a real thought in terms of how a developer would look at this or how developers look at Fraser. And I mean, I don't know of anybody beating down the doors to be building much of anything here right now in the current market. And I think the cost benefit analysis hasn't been done by staff, or nor do I think any private sector developers that would actually build product like this have been consulted or discussed. Would this be something they would consider? And at the percentage levels that you're talking about on deed restrictions and the cost implications to an overall project's value, I think you're not going to have much take up, if any. And I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I mean, we built affordable housing without any incentives. My company has, and we're still building housing without incentives. So I guess, there's a recognition by our company of the need for the community of having housing and having a workforce that can provide the services that frankly our families, friends, and customers that visit this area need and require. And we're trying to fulfill that. And I can tell you, just looking at what you just proposed, I don't think we would take advantage of any of those incentives, knowing what the cost implications are ultimately. So I just think, I understand what you're trying to do. I think there's better ways to do it and better approaches to incentivizing people to be able to get it done. And again, you kind of need to put yourselves in the shoes of a builder developer to understand all of the things that we deal with and the costs that we deal with and how things are evaluated. And furthermore, a lot of people use financing, and banks generally are not real favorable towards deed restrictions on properties. So it makes it even more cumbersome from a financing perspective. So just, a few things for thought for you all, and appreciate you giving me the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Or do you have any comment on that? He probably raises a good point. My feeling is that let's give this a try, and we can always modify it in the future.
Ironically, the first thing I thought was, would Clark take advantage of these on the Myers lot? Because I know he's talking apart, or has historically talked apartments there, and the 45 versus 55, and I presumed his attitude towards the deed restrictions and was fairly correct. So yeah, I think those are valid points, and thank you.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second,
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have closed public hearing. There is an ordinance available. If you'd like to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 524, amending chapter 19 of the Fraser Municipal Code to allow affordable housing zoning incentives.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay,
Okay,
one
and
opposed.
thank you, staff, for all the hard work on this and planning and everybody else.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to updates. Board, do you have any updates? I think my only one from since the last meeting is to congratulate KFFR on another radio tower on the top of Granby Ranch, and I was there for the ribbon cutting. It was a pretty cool event, and it was also their birthday bash evening, so they got the whole community in a big community-wide picture. It was pretty cool.
They have blown away their fundraising target.
Have they?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
They were
excellent.
shooting for 60 last time I saw, which was
Mhm.
last Friday. It was about 60.
Okay. Great.
The, maybe for a future agenda, if something's not too thick, we could bring back some of the, things that we learned at CML. Just have a short discussion.
We could certainly do that. If there's anything you want to just mention, you could do it
Right
now.
at this moment, did bring my book and my notes, so,
Gotcha.
but I'd like to make it an agenda item. Just
It's probably a good idea.
I just wanted to say that I think Fraser had an incredibly strong showing yesterday at I I don't even know how to title that with his grandkids um
Oh.
organizational thing, but I think some of the ideas that we contributed, I'm so happy that you called out the model. I didn't have to.
Yeah.
I think the university model on tuition, I think that was a very strong suggestion. I think Fraser had an incredible showing. On the other side of it, I was a little disappointed to who wasn't there. Um, but I think we brought some strong ideas to the table, and it was positive. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a good meeting.
Adam, may I ask you what you were talking about that you
It,
attended?
what would you
It's
say?
the Grand County Early Childhood Education Strategic Investment
Yeah.
Plan.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good job.
I think I got that right. We could confirm tomorrow.
Kids are smarter than me if they can.
So yeah, there was a number of so Grand Beginnings, this is an effort that they have been spearheading with grant money from the Temple
Buell.
Coin Buell Foundation. Did I
Mhm.
butcher that?
I can't remember if coin is a part of it or not.
It's okay. You didn't do as badly as I did. So,
So a number of folks from Grandkids were there, a number of people from the town of Fraser, Keith Reesberg, the town manager, and Winter Park and the Winter Park mayor were there virtually. Catherine Ross from the chamber,
Sky Fox.
Sky
yeah.
Guy Fox from the resort,
and Megan Liddy.
Megan Liddy from Grand
were the other
Foundation.
three biggies.
So that's an ongoing discussion. They're hoping to have some sort of report deliverables available at meetings kind of after Labor Day to discuss, to hopefully have some actual kind of action items and recommended strategies to move forward with. So I know this is one of the things we want to look at with a joint meeting with Winter Park, if that timing works out, as well as with the future mayors and managers commissioners meeting.
Yeah.
As we move into budget season and are looking at things for next year.
And one of the points that was brought up that hits home is it's not just about childcare. It's about having workforce here, because if families don't have childcare, they can't stay here. And we don't have a good workforce. And those are the people we want here. So
We want everybody.
we want them all. It's
I don't
true.
have kids. You don't want me?
I know, and we're really glad you're here because you're an asset.
Yeah.
You get your AMI up and you have kids all the same.
And there goes the AMI.
So anyway, but
Okay. Any other updates?
I have an update.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So my law firm, as of yesterday, merged with another law firm. It's called JVAM Law. They're a fairly young, progressive group that's based out of Basalt. They've got a number of offices on the West Slope. They're in Aspen, Basalt, Linwood Springs, Salida, Buena Vista, and now Fraser. So nothing's really changing locally. I'm not going anywhere. None of my staff is going anywhere. We're just merging with a new firm, and we're going to have a new name going forward. I did it for several reasons. I've been a business owner in Grand County for about 35 years, and I needed to have a path forward eventually. Nobody internally was stepping up. And so I found this group that was very interested in expanding their footprint in Western Colorado. So I'm a partner with this group. One of my other attorneys is also a partner with this group. And so with us joining these guys, they are a pretty significant size firm now. They got about 22 lawyers and 9 or 10 staff members.
They do a lot of the same type of work that we do. They represent several towns on the West Slope, multiple special districts, metro districts, school districts, a lot of real estate, a lot of water law. So I think it's gonna be good for us, and that I'm gonna be able to get a lot of administrative duties off my plate and be able to just kind of focus on practicing law. Gives my people a path forward, gives me a path forward eventually. And I think it's going to be good for the clients too. It really creates a deep bench. You know, it's not just going to be us locally. We have a lot of resources to tap now. So hopefully it's going to be good. No change in fees, no change in anything. You'll just see a different name on the letterhead and a different sign out front. So if you guys have any questions, please fire away.
Can you spell that? The firm?
So
said no,
it's
no.
it's an acronym for the original founding four partners. So
Okay.
it's JVAM, and they've got a website you guys can check out.
An email,
Okay, I missed it.
forwarded an email from Ken.
Okay.
Oh, did Michael
Yeah,
forward
I
that?
got it from this one.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I didn't know if he'd forwarded that. So, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting.
So we do have a few staff updates. I'll start with the bike park. So Avid was out yesterday, and Paul and I met with them on site, and so they are looking to break ground July 14th. We did get another $10,000 from the Grand Foundation to bring us up to 996,000. The Rendezvous Foundation has said that they would like to sign on as a Trailblazer sponsor, and provide 25,000, and get their logo on a park feature. And we've had interest from a few other businesses. I had an email today from Cabin Works that's interested in one of the levels of sponsorship. So I think we're getting closer. We're working our way up there. But
Did you put that together? Was that your creation, the sponsorship levels? Yeah.
with some help from different parties, but I will
We can
pass these out. Please
find out.
share them with any potential interested sponsors. We are looking at doing some sort of groundbreaking event and hope to finalize those details shortly. We're tentatively talking about maybe Tuesday, July 22nd, before picnic in the park. Just kind of doing something over there on site and then inviting people to come on over to picnic afterwards. So we'll let you know once a plan around that is finalized. In terms of other updates, Paul, did you have some?
Yeah, we'll start with a couple. As you can see, obviously Town Hall is under construction. Staff is thankful that the jackhammers are done. Hopefully you will see some concrete forms going in on Monday, and they hope to pour. The holiday kind of caught them off guard with trying to get things poured this week. Sidewalks will be starting on Monday the 7th. They will be staging equipment tomorrow along Leonard between Eisenhower and Mill over there towards the railroad. And they will be flyering every house that'll be affected. This will be the fourth notice to those property owners, so they should be well informed of what's going on. The church renovation, we have all of our bids in. We got one bid that was significantly lower, one bid that was significantly high. So checking references from some front range municipalities that have used the low bidder, just to make sure that they're not being change ordered significantly after the project starts before we bring that to the board with that number. As Sarah said, the bike park will kick off on the 14th. They were on site yesterday putting in the flags for the stormwater prevention plan. So that's moving forward. Trying to think what else is up on the board over there. Can't see it, sorry. Lots of projects, the sewer.
Town hall renovations, historic church.
Okay. The sewer grouting for this season is almost finished. Though they finished that, they have to come back and do the 2 warranty work jobs from last year that didn't take. So that seems to be going well. Just got a lot of project coming. Obviously, you guys just awarded 2 contracts tonight. So South Wapiti Bridge, we've been talking about that for the last 2 years. We got a CDOT yellow rating on that. it's got some voids in the bottom, so they're gonna grout that. Try to do the Band-Aid process depending on what happens moving forward. Didn't want to spend over $1 million on replacing a bridge that we would like to realign. And then the PRV, just getting that installed, so that should be quickly, make everything automated, where Lucas and his guys don't have to go close valves or open valves in the event of a fire. So just kind of moving forward with those. And then St. Louis Landing, they are currently trying to finish the tie-in there on Highway 40 for the water line, and then start moving on the manhole and the sewer there down Park to get that done, get that moving forward as well. So working on the last of the wet utilities there.
Okay. Sounds like that's all the updates.
Just lastly, I know Michael did want to talk about dates for the joint meeting. He was looking at, I think, late July or August with childcare, the childcare team. It may make sense to push that to early September, to have a more thorough discussion about that based on their report. But I will let him reach out about that and then coordinate with Winter Park.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Any opposed? Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So did you say Michael's mother died?
Mm-hmm.
Was it expected?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
ALS.
Okay. Ooh.